Hi folks. Right, this is Louis Martin and I'm talking about Criminal Law Unit 3 Silex. Right, you've probably not heard from me for a bit because I am aware that you have got quite a bit of reading to do. The last bit of reading topic material was all to do with defences, which is quite extensive. For example, duress, self-defence and intoxication. They all receive a week on the undergraduate programme. So you have a lecture on each one of those and a week's workshop. So that's in essence 3 weeks of work. So I have left you alone for a bit. However, I have now set you a formative piece of assessment on Microsoft Teams and Blackboard so that you've got the opportunity in your own time to experience a mock paper. So the paper consists of the front piece A, which is some questions that are like short answer questions. These range from like a sentence to a paragraph, and there's a marking scheme attached to the question. So the next section is a scenario similar to the scenario you will get in the exam. Now, what I suggest you do is have a look and do some reading and then take the test under timed exam conditions at home and then submit it. Now, for your purposes, you're sitting an exam. Theoretically, this exam is going to be in June. Now, I don't know what's happening in relation to Silex, but at Staffordshire University, tomorrow is the last day I'll be able to go into this office. This particular building is going to be shut, and there'll be no more face-to-face teaching. Everything's going to be done online. That won't affect you, obviously, until your allotted time in May. I do not know at this stage whether you'll be coming in May or not, and it's still too early to see whether your exam will be held in June or not. We just don't know, but we've got to take it as if it will be. And even if it's not held in person, you may have online tests. We're swapping over our examinations to online, either submissions or filmed. For those of you who use Microsoft Teams, obviously we can do assessments live on Teams. I presume you can do that as well on Blackboard, with Blackboard Collaborate. So there are different methods of assessment. The old-fashioned traditional exam will not be used by staffs for the foreseeable future. I do not know about Silex. What I suggest you do then is go back and go through some of the key themes, such as actus reus and mens rea, the factual and legal causation and omissions, special duties. When would a person be liable for failing to act? They're obviously quite popular. Another popular one is the sort of issues around recklessness. So you've got two types of recklessness, both subjective. One is the Cunningham recklessness, Cunningham 1957. This is the person who realises the risk and goes on to take it and has some foresight of some harm or some consequences. And then you've got the RVG and another, which is a subjective recklessness for criminal damage. And that says where the person realises the risk or one exists, goes on to take it, but realises it's unreasonable to take that risk. So the key word there is unreasonable. And that risk is aimed at juveniles, children and people with learning difficulties. However, that is for criminal damage only. You would be best advised to go through the homicide, so murder, voluntary manslaughter, constructive act manslaughter and gross negligence. There's always a question on homicide, always. The definition of murder is relatively straightforward. The most complicated aspect of homicide is voluntary manslaughter, the Coroners and Justice Act, diminished responsibility, and loss of control. That's the most complicated. The other aspects are all common law, so they're quite brief in their summaries. So you've got the definition of murder, you've got the definition of unlawful act manslaughter. So person has the actus reus and mens rea for a criminal act. The act is dangerous, and the dangerousness leads to the death of a person. So that's pretty straightforward. Gross negligence manslaughter, person has a duty of care to the victim. The duty of care is breached. The breach is so gross, so serious, that it transcends into criminal law, again common law, and then the jury will decide. So I would also suggest and recommend that you make sure you know the actus reus and mens rea for criminal damage and for theft. They're property offences. And in your mock, you're going to have questions around self-defence, maybe self-defence, or intoxication. So just have a broad general knowledge revision. You might also need to just write these out by rote. So you're learning things by rote for a written exam. So try and, what I used to do was get a pad and just write out the actus reus and mens rea and any defences for each one of these. Try and write out the Coroners and Justice Act defences, for sections 54, 55, when it comes to the abnormality of mind and then the loss of control type things. For those of you who are on Teams, please feel free to message me on Teams and I'll answer, because I'm going to be online using Teams to teach my undergraduates. And for those of you on Blackboard, just email me on my university email address and I will endeavour to answer. So do please submit that and I'll give you some feedback, and it's good practice for you. And it's early on, I know it's only March, but your priority, obviously you're at work and you're doing different units as well, is to pass the exam. And in that case, practicing exams and testing yourself in exam conditions is the ideal way to prepare for your exam. Thank you.